All right, so it looks like Ben Shapiro went on the Tucker Carlson show, or as this video that was posted to the Daily Wire says, Ben Shapiro discusses Beto O'Rourke on Tucker Carlson, which I find obviously very funny for obvious reasons. They misspelled his name on accident. But we are going to be watching this, and I'm going to do it a little bit different this time because normally I show the clip and then talk about all of it later. What I want to do with this clip is I'm gonna play it a little bit, and then when I feel like responding, I'm gonna jump in and respond. Now I just watched most of this clip, but Ben Shapiro here is going to give some actual good analysis on Beto O'Rourke and the Democratic race and the Democratic Party right now. But then he's also going to veer off the deep end in very dumb ways, very obviously dumb ways. So they're here talking about Beto O'Rourke. Know that they're obviously, strident Republicans. So, that's Ben Shapiro starts to get into some weird territory. I believe he previously straight up said that Bernie Sanders was actually going to be the 2020 Democratic nominee. He was going to be voted as the nominee, if I recall correctly. So, let's take a look.
America's top podcast, The Ben Shapiro Show. He's the author of the book, The Right Side of History, and we're happy to have him on set tonight in Los Angeles. Ben, it's great to see you. Thank you.
I don't know how I kept a straight face while you did that.
I don't know how I did. There's so many levels here, but I do believe that this is the end of the Beto O'Rourke phenomenon.
Yeah, I think he's toast.
What are the lessons that we should draw from what we just saw?
Well, I think that you can run in the moderate lane as the Bobby Kennedy candidate so long as there's not anything newer on the block. Buttigieg came along and drank his milkshake, and he had some intersectional credibility. The problem for Beto is that he happened to be straight and also white, just like Bobby Kennedy was. Buttigieg is gay, so therefore he takes precedence. Also, he speaks more languages, like Norwegian, which is a language that is very much in vogue with the media these days. And he doesn't just play guitar, he also plays piano, and he does it with Ben Folds 5 and the whole deal. So Buttigieg has basically stolen all of his momentum, and I think you're right. I mean, I think Beto is toast.
Yes, so that is actually very on-point analysis of the situation of Beto O'Rourke and Pete Buttigieg, because as you broke down there, that's right. So basically, Beto is supposed to be like the cool guy and everything, and so the strategy of the establishment right now is we need to throw as many turds on the wall as possible and just see what can stick. So in other words, throw everything possible at Bernie Sanders to try to win. So they tried Beto. He fizzled out big time. He was lying, by the way. He lied about his fundraising because he said he got 6.1 million, 5.8 million of that came from bundlers, big money bundlers. And then also he had actually included 300,000, not coincidentally, because look, it's it was a little bit over what Bernie got. I forgot exactly what Bernie's number was. I think it was like 5.9 or something like that. And it was all general election funds that could not be used in the primary. So his liar, he's a fraud. That's why it took so long to come out. They were crafting up a plan. And so he's right. Pete Buttigieg came in. He took over all of the steam that Beto O'Rourke had. And he's the guy who speaks multiple languages. And he's gay. And so it adds all these different, features in there that makes him a cooler candidate for the establishment. And I did a story yesterday about how big money bundlers are lining up. They're lining up to fund Pete Buttigieg's campaign to bundle $500K, $100K, $200K. To bundle up all that cash from people, max contributions, to his campaign. So that is 100% correct.
Here, speaking Norwegian and playing the piano, and I'm being sincere, are actually impressive things to do, for sure, and I'm impressed by them. But they're not really policy prescriptions. They're not ideas that are going to improve America. Neither is...
Very true. Pete Buttigieg, by the way, has an anti-policy stance. He genuinely dislikes policy, and his philosophical stance is we should be more philosophical as the left, and instead of being so policy-driven, we should instead be more philosophical in our approach, which is disgusting, it's abhorrent, and it's stupid.
Who you sleep with, relevant to running the country, as far as I can tell, or any of these criteria meaningful. So, like, where's the part where we get to debate their ideas for the country?
Well, the problem is, obviously, that there's only one thought leader in the Democratic Party right now, and that's Bernie Sanders. And what you're seeing is a bunch of candidates who are attempting to steer into the Bernie Sanders lane. And there's no room in that lane. Bernie Sanders has occupied that entire lane. You talk about ideas candidates. The one candidate who keeps shouting ideas from the rooftops is, of course, our Native American candidate, Elizabeth Warren.
Obviously, he's throwing in a disgusting shot there because he's a prick. But yeah, Elizabeth Warren actually is throwing in a lot of ideas. She's the one who originally had proposed the wealth tax, a 2%, I believe is a 2% wealth tax on estates that had over $50 million, which was a great idea. I was actually very impressed by that plan. And she's been just throwing out more and more ideas and, breaking up the big tech companies and other specific financial plans or fiscal plans. And that's very true. And she has been saying, yeah, she really hasn't been able to crack the Bernie zone very well, if at all, really.
Who keeps spouting ideas every 5 minutes. Here's a new policy prescription. Why isn't anyone paying attention to me? And the answer is because you are in Bernie Sanders' lane. He is the thought leader in this lane. Well, in the moderate lane, there are no thought leaders. They're just a bunch of people with platitudes. Biden is presumably the thought leader.
That is completely correct. But the problem is that, and I think he doesn't understand this, and we'll find this out as we get into this a little bit more, but he doesn't realize that being in the moderate lane in and of itself is, for the most part, a policy. So it doesn't have, it doesn't have many policies. So when you're a moderate, what kind of policies do you really have? And you end up, the sort of de facto default position is to just have platitudes because you're just a middle of the way sort of, moderate. What policy positions do you even have?
Leader, but Joe Biden doesn't have enough thoughts to be a thought leader. And so who exactly is going to come along and occupy that lane while still being able to win over the woke intersectional base of the Democratic Party? Whoever does that has a possibility at the nomination. Right now, Buttigieg can do that only insofar as he can speak the platitudes that sound moderate, but when he's actually pegged down, as you've noted, he's just as far left as Bernie Sanders.
No, total bogus. Pete Buttigieg is not as far left as Bernie Sanders. He can't even be pegged down because he has an anti-policy stance. So this is where Ben Shapiro goes wrong. No, he's not when he's pegged down, and he does this garbage too. Like he genuinely believes, this doofus genuinely believes that Kamala Harris is a far lefty and like akin to Bernie Sanders. That's total bogus. Pete Buttigieg is not in any way like Bernie Sanders or has the same policy positions like Bernie Sanders. That's the difference between the two. That's precisely the difference between Pete Buttigieg and Bernie Sanders.
There's a guy telling us what a great Christian he is who's for abortion up until birth and for sex selection. Spare me your Christian talk, please. It's absurd. I'm just struck, though, by Bernie could be the one guy. I mean, I want to have a conversation about ideas because I think it's
Dave Rubin, I want to talk about ideas, guys.
Important, and clearly we need to make some changes to the way the country's going. But Bernie doesn't really seem to be an ideas candidate when you listen to him.
Okay, that is totally false. Bernie is the number one ideas candidate. He's actually the transformer of really like modern, very recently we're talking, from 2016 onward, who really, hammered down and set up this sort of ring or arena, if you will, of being a policy wonk. Every single thing he says is about ideas. It's prescribing an idea. It's prescribing a policy position, whether it's Medicare for all, whether it's free college education, whether it's allowing prescription drugs to be imported here from Canada because they pay like, half the amount, half or, 1/3 of how much we pay here, whether it be raising the minimum wage to a living wage, all these other kinds of things. Okay. That is the most bogus statement I've ever heard in my entire life.
Never says anything, unlike Elizabeth Warren, he never says anything interesting. Why is that?
Well, I mean, I think that his ideas are so radical, but they are consistent. And so everybody has followed him out to the fringe. So he can shout Medicare for all, and what you'll see is every Democrat then pay homage to Medicare for all. Footnote, we don't really want Medicare for all. We want sort of a gradualistic plan that may achieve Medicare for all sometime in the future.
Right.
But everybody is trying to imitate Bernie. Bernie is the guy who is really running this race. Bernie's almost in a position right now that Trump was in 2016, where everybody in the Democratic Party who's running is afraid to tick him off because they hope that eventually he'll collapse and they'll get his support. But he's riding at 25 to 30% in virtually all of the polls. That support is extraordinarily durable. I don't think that it's going anywhere. And so he can just steer that lane. He could win Iowa. He could win New Hampshire. He could do well in California and New York.
He's taking New Hampshire for sure. Iowa, I expect him to take Iowa as well because he lost by literally 0.2 to Hillary in Iowa, and then he beat Hillary by like 22 points in New Hampshire. He'll take those easy money. Easy money.
There's a reason that Democrats are running scared of Bernie. And
100% right. They're literally setting up meetings to figure out how to stop Bernie. They have plans they're trying to collude together, the establishment Democrats. There are meetings that are going on between Pete Buttigieg is one of the people who's been attending. Nancy Pelosi, another one's been attending. They're trying to figure out how to stop Bernard Sanders from winning because right now he's on the trajectory of winning. So he's absolutely right.
What is puzzling to me is that they are so interested in what the journalists on Twitter say, this kind of echo chamber in the media say, that they won't just go to where the mainstream of their own party is, which is the moderate area, right? Joe Biden.
No, that's where Ben goes off the rails. That's not the the major area of the party. The major area of the party is where Bernie Sanders is. In fact, the majority of America is where Bernie Sanders is, as we see from polling data like Medicare for All that says 70%, including like 50% of Republican support. That is totally false. A moderate candidate will get their ass handed to them and spanked red by Bernie Sanders. Someone like Joe Biden is going to get destroyed. He's going to make a point here.
Is a terrible candidate. He's actually leading in most of these polls because he is perceived as a moderate.
No, that's not true. The reason why he's leading in the polls is because he's rolling off of Obama nostalgia, and he hasn't been in every single thing that he's done in public has been destroyed. So what I mean by that is, remember, he called Pence a decent guy. He said Jeb Bush was a darn good governor. He did a fundraiser where he got paid $200K a speaking gig to do a speaking gig filleting a Republican who tried to repeal the ACA. Every single thing this man has done in public life, which has been very minuscule because he's trying to not be subject to public scrutiny, and so that combines for having a high, sort of approval rating or polling data numbers.
True. But that was true of Beto and Buttigieg, by the way. The reason both of them were doing well for a moment there was because they are both perceived as moderate with all of the platitudes. And then when you get down to policy, it turns out that they want to be more like Bernie than like Biden.
To be fair, neither Buttigieg is rising in some polls right now, but Beto has never really been doing very good.
The Democratic Party actually has the stones to run as a moderate inside the Democratic Party, even though it's probably the best possible way for them to win the nomination.
No, again, you're wrong. That's not the best way to win the nomination. And this is where you have to be careful of taking the opposing party's advice as to where you go in your own party. Obviously, that's not the way to go. Bernie Sanders is the way to go, not Pete Buttigieg or Beto O'Rourke. And I'm surprised he's even advocating that.
And yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And your diagnosis is
totally
that
wrong.
They are captive of social media, and that's why?
I think they're captive of social media. I think that they're captive of the intersectional woke base. I think they're afraid that they are going to be held hostage to the dictates of the New York Times editorial board and people suggesting that they're not woke enough if they don't pay homage to the latest flavor, slavery reparations, or whatever it is today.
I think the person who gives the finger to that mob gets the support of millions.
I think that's right, and then has a good shot in the general.
Right.
But I don't think any of them have the actual.
You probably get my support. I mean, if someone were to stand up and say, you know what, I'm not taking orders from you. How's that sound? You don't even care what the person is for. I'd probably vote for him because I'm so desperate for that.
I mean, that is why if a Democrat actually were able to do that, they would win sweeping support. But they can't do that. But we've been saying this for years. All you have to do is not be crazy, and they can't stop themselves. They just can't.
So good. Ben Shapiro, great to see you.
How do you come up with nonsense like? How do you make such a strong assertion with zero data or any cogent analysis whatsoever? You're telling me that you'd vote for someone like Joe Biden. He's been doing that. He's been crapping on millennials. Take Joe Biden's comments on millennials, put them side by side by the Ben Shapiro video I reacted to where he craps on millennials. So You already have someone like that, but you're, for whatever reason, you don't want to vote for him because you're lying. That's the reason why. You're lying. You're not going to vote for someone like that. That's not your interest. You're just totally... I just don't understand what the purpose of that was. He's totally lying. He's totally making it up. None of that made any sense whatsoever. And that end kind of threw me off, to be honest with you. Tucker Carlson obviously would not vote for them. And that would be someone who would win according to what data, according to what evidence? None, because you don't have any. You just made that up. You just made that up with all of your feelings. That's what you did. Your feelings just came together to make up some just complete and utter nonsense, and that's what that is. So let me know your thoughts on this down below.